When you pull a new device out of the box, you immediately dive into the system settings. You adjust the screen brightness, toggle push notifications to avoid distractions, and set strict privacy boundaries so the hardware serves your specific daily needs. Yet, for a factor that correlates heavily with long-term mental and physical health, our romantic partnerships, we often do the exact opposite. We blindly boot up the inherited factory default software. This relationship design one-on-one interface illustrates a different approach, moving off that default script to actively engineer a custom operating system. Running this requires adhering to one non-negotiable rule. You must take radical ownership of your own nervous system and physiological state. Operating a complex modern relationship on legacy settings without examining the underlying code risks a significant system failure when the software can no longer handle the modern emotional load.
Skeptical. Mention non-monogamy in a typical social setting, and people immediately assume the relationship is inherently chaotic or merely a symptom of deep dysfunction. This graphic displays empirical reality, pulling from a massive meta-analysis of nearly 25,000 participants. It shows zero significant differences in relationship satisfaction, trust, or longevity between ENM and monogamous dynamics, while revealing elevated cognitive flexibility and ambiguity tolerance in practitioners. Ethical non-monogamy operates as a high-performance relational system, requiring specific, rigorous architectural loads to function, rather than a lifestyle hack for casual recreation. To build a custom setup, we first have to identify the legacy code currently running in the background, compulsory monogamy, a pervasive social system that enforces a strict one-way trajectory for romance. This diagram illustrates that trajectory, commonly known as the relational escalator. It presents a Hobson's choice: ascend the steps exactly as designed, or face social isolation and be labeled a failure. You step on at exclusive focus, ascend to cohabitation, merge your lives through marriage, and ideally remain frozen at the peak for the next 50 years. Any lateral move is punished. For hundreds of thousands of years in nomadic, egalitarian tribes, human survival relied on communal care. Strict exclusivity was engineered during the agricultural revolution purely to establish patrilineal, ensuring that male landowners could pass accumulated property to verified biological heirs. Over subsequent centuries, a heavy coat of cultural mythology, narratives about predestined halves and romantic soulmates, was painted over this ancient property law to ensure compliance. Today, we are seeing a massive demographic rejection of this system. As highlighted here, 68% of young adults are actively questioning this rigid trajectory. Recognizing the escalator as a socio-economic technology built for agrarian inheritance gives you the autonomy to step off and redesign your relational architecture. Operating outside the escalator means you can no longer rely on automatic assumptions. You have to manually adjust the parameters of your connections. This settings panel displays the three primary system variables used to configure relationship structures: emotional boundaries, sexual boundaries, and hierarchy. In a polyamory configuration, both the emotional and sexual boundaries are left open, allowing multiple intimate relationships to form simultaneously, with a hierarchy that can be tailored to the specific people involved. An open relationship structure alters these parameters. While sexual exploration is permitted, the emotional slider remains strictly closed, maintaining a high structural hierarchy to protect the core primary partnership. Relationship anarchy completely rejects preset default rules. Every bond is custom-built from scratch based on mutual desire, bringing the hierarchy setting to none. Manually managing these sliders across multiple partners demands an immense complexity budget. It requires high-level executive functioning and scheduling logistics that the default script usually handles for you. Running any of these configurations is mathematically impossible unless you actively rewrite your deepest psychological programming regarding scarcity. This pie chart visualizes the scarcity bug baked into our legacy code. We are conditioned to believe that emotional energy and attention are finite, zero-sum resources, where a partner's connection with someone else is a quantifiable subtraction from us.
The necessary upgrade is the abundance patch, rooted in the broaden and build theory. As these overlapping circles show, positive emotional experiences actually expand a person's capacity, creating self-other overlap, where your partner's external joy bleeds over to elevate your own baseline well-being. Consistently practicing this mindset facilitates compersion, the sympathetic joy experienced when a partner finds happiness with another person. It inverts the primitive threat response of jealousy. Implementing this requires deep emotional readiness, which is currently lacking. Surveys show that while 80% of Generation Z desires profound connection, only 55% feel psychologically prepared to engage in it. 48% of users deleted their dating apps in 2024, citing a sense of isolation and burnout within the process. The result is a retreat into extreme solo optimization.
People attempt to become perfectly healed and fully enlightened in isolation before they ever risk engaging with another person. You cannot outsource your loneliness to a self-help book. Genuine relational skills and the capacity for concepts like compersion can only be forged in the messy, unpredictable friction of human connection. Entering that friction without the escalator's guardrails requires high-tier infrastructure. You need protocols to process inevitable system errors without burning down the entire network. Jealousy is not a philosophical betrayal, it is a somatic event. When the amygdala detects a threat, it bypasses the prefrontal cortex and triggers an acute biochemical dump of cortisol and adrenaline into the body. To manage this, practitioners utilize a 3-step jealousy roadmap. First, notice the physical sensations as raw internal data. Second, name the specific underlying fear, whether it is abandonment or inadequacy. Third, regulate the nervous system using somatic breathwork. Somatic regulation must always precede verbal communication. Attempting to process complex relationship dynamics while your system is flooded with stress hormones will cause the conversation to crash. The second mandatory piece of infrastructure is the radar check-in. This is a dedicated, recurring monthly meeting strictly focused on the operational health of the relationship. The protocol requires establishing a shared, factual timeline of the past month, strictly following a preset agenda, and utilizing nonviolent communication to express specific needs without adding narrative spin or blame. It includes a critical failsafe known as HELT. If either partner is hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, the discussion pauses. Resolutions take the form of 30-day experimental action points, treating the relationship as a living, collaborative laboratory. Implementing these strict protocols removes the panic from disagreements. A fight that might end a default relationship becomes a manageable, routine system update. Beyond emotional architecture, stepping off the relational escalator forces you to confront a harsh physical reality. You lose all the automatic legal safety nets provided by the state. In a medical emergency or a probate dispute, hospital administrations and family courts default to legal spouses or blood relatives. They do not recognize the emotional validity of polyamorous networks or relationship anarchy. You have to utilize specific physical instruments to bridge this dangerous gap. This means executing medical powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, and detailed cohabitation agreements for asset division. You must proactively establish these legal designations long before a crisis strikes. Sovereign relational design requires you to take profound, proactive adult responsibility for the legal and structural realities of your life. Moving from a passive participant writing an ancient agricultural legacy code to the lead architect of a custom operating system is an intense transition. Ethical non-monogamy functions as an intensive training ground for accountability, requiring practitioners to navigate complex emotional terrain without the safety net of default rules. As the title card reminds us, the entire framework hinges on one premise: you must remain the boss of your own nervous system. Choosing to flip this switch means abandoning the comfort of pre-packaged societal rules in favor of deliberate, daily, active consent. Stop evaluating your most important connections against an inherited factory default. Do the brave work of designing a system that actually serves the reality of your life.